Hey everyone, Andre here. Something a little bit different because I really want to talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. I saw it last night. I have to talk about it, and to do so, I have my good friend here, being Reese from Kiwi Talks. How are you doing, Reese?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And you just saw the movie yourself, being in Australia, is it?
New Zealand.
New Zealand, my bad, yes. Hence, I guess Kiwi Talks.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So, I'm glad to have you here. People may know you from your amazing series of interviews with primarily with retro staff, but you cover all kinds of gaming. But I didn't know that you're also apparently a big Avatar and maybe even a James Cameron fan?
More so a James Cameron fan than an Avatar fan. But yes, I do like both.
Okay. So I think that largely aligns with me. Although I have turned into more of an Avatar fan over the years. Like when I first saw it, I thought it was good. Didn't blow me away. But as time has gone on, I've been more and more I think I've become more receptive of what it was going for and like what it accomplished. And I just really appreciate it more now, I think, than when it came out, as like just being a really solid piece of like filmmaking, because that is what James Cameron excels at. Like he is just a very hands-on director. He knows almost every facet of the movie making process, and when he makes something, like regardless of your thoughts, of one's opinion on like, you know, the story or some individual elements, it's hard to deny that when everything comes together, he usually delivers. Like usually you're in for a really impressive showpiece of whatever it is you're about to see.
Yeah, for sure. I very much agree. He is the king of blockbusters for a reason, because he always pushes the envelope in what he's doing. And Way of Water is exactly the same, right?
That is definitely the case. Like you can't deny that every dollar of this apparently large budget ended up on screen. Like it's a visual showcase. So I want to talk about this with you. I want to dive in deep, so to speak, and discuss The Way of Water. So for anyone watching, how this discussion is going to work is we're going to start off initially with no spoilers at all. We're going to try our best to avoid anything major. We're going to talk in more abstract terms about our general thoughts on the story, the visuals, everything about this movie without spoiling any specific plot points. But we are going to have a spoiler half of the discussion. We'll give you a huge warning. Don't worry, you won't be able to miss it. But we will discuss spoilers as well, specific plot elements, characters, and all that. So with that out of the way, let's get into the non-spoiler half of the discussion. And let's start off with your overall thoughts, Reese. What did you think of The Way of Water after having viewed it?
I think for the most part, it's a great film. I think when you're talking about the visuals, it very much pushes the envelope. It's so hyper real. Like it's something, if you were to watch a documentary and you see the underwater elements of a documentary, it looks like that. It looks super real, even though these are alien creatures. I mean, it's just truly breathtaking. There's no words to describe how good the CGI is. It makes the first Avatar look like it had PS3 graphics.
Yeah, they are mind-blowing how good the CG is here. Like, it is easy to forget that you're watching characters that don't exist. Like, they really sell their presence in this also fake world, of course, but like everything is presented at a quality that is unmatched in movies. Like, they don't seem out of place at all. Like, you are convinced you're looking at real characters, real beings on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, what do you say? I mean, that's truly the element that sticks out. That's the main reason why people will watch it, and you will not be disappointed. Seriously, yep. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to the classic South Park episode where James Cameron's all about raising the bar, and here he is again, raising the quality of the graphics. Like, I just rewatched Avatar a few months ago during the re-release. I'm like, man, these graphics still, like, this CG still looks like pretty much better than almost anything out there. And it's because
totally right.
There's so much care put into like every facet of the visuals. But then we have, The Way of Water now, which just blows past what Avatar already did, which is itself was still impressive. I'm like, damn. So for me, I had a really good time with this movie. Like, the 3 hours flies by. Like, it does not feel like a 3 hour and 12-minute movie. And that's great. Like, that's what I was hoping. I was hoping it would be just a very fun time, impressive visuals. Like, you're in for a ride. And I think on the whole the movie just works really well. But I also have some issues with it too. There are some plot points, some very specific plot points that I kind of bumped up against. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I like that they went in this direction. And to the movie's credit, they get those out of the way pretty early on, in the sense that, I mean, they're introduced early on, so it's either like, hey, you're either on board for this or you're not going to enjoy this movie. And I got on board. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a good time here, but I'm still not sure if I love the choices they made in some instances, and I kind of wish they had maybe gone in a different direction at points. But again, overall, you know, I thought what they did here, especially with how it relates to family, you know, Jake Sully, you know, now has a family, which I don't think is a spoiler to say. They've shown that in the ads, and I think they did a really good job making him seem, just giving it a different focus now, almost a little bit like Terminator 2, where they went in a little bit with a family angle there compared to the first one. I think this movie probably takes even a step further than that did in some respects, and on the whole, just a really fun time.
Yeah, I've got to commend James Cameron for wanting to do the whole family thing, because when you're trying to balance out that many characters, whereas with the first one it was mostly situated on Jake and Neytiri, right? And in this one you've got all the different children, plus you've got Jake and Neytiri, and then the additional kids and the additional tribal leaders, and then you've still got the military and all that, and trying to balance that all out within 3 hours. They did pretty well considering.
Yeah, there is a lot. There's definitely a lot going on, and I think I have heard some complaints that maybe there's almost too much going on, like there are too many characters. I didn't find that to be too much of an issue, although I will say I did find myself getting confused with two of Jake's children. Like I kept getting
yes, exactly the same. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know which one's which.
Yeah, you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell which one was which. And when the camera's moving a couple times and it's moving quite quickly, you're like, which one is that? And until they open their mouths, you can't really specifically tell which one it is. Yeah, because they look so similar. They
do, exactly. Yeah, they look very similar. So I think they could have differentiated them a little bit more to help with that. And they kind of just throw you into this world. Like they introduce all the characters pretty quickly. They really gloss over, I think, real fast how some of these characters even came to be. And again, we're not gonna spoil that yet. But like I was surprised by how quickly they just like try to get you up to speed so they can get, so they can start getting into the action or the things that, that Cameron wants you to enjoy, which is the world itself. And and of course how it builds to a climax eventually. But kind of to that point, I will say, I don't know how you feel compared to Avatar 1. I think that on the whole, and this might be something I need to watch the movie again to maybe further appreciate, because now I won't be distracted by some of the plot points that bumped up against. But I did think the story didn't quite work as well. It didn't feel as smooth as Avatar 1. Like, there were points in this one where it felt like it was just kind of meandering, and I didn't quite know what the driving force was at that point, until something happens, and then it starts pushing the plot forward again. But there were a few times I'm like, okay, I'm loving what I'm seeing, I'm really liking the visuals, but I don't know what's happening with the story at this point. Did you have that at all, or?
Yeah, and a lot of pacing issues as a result, because the story goes in so many different directions.
Right.
Whereas with the first one, it felt like it was focused solely on Jake and Neytiri. But because you have all the different children and the different tribes, it goes in all these different directions. I think particularly the middle, has the biggest pacing issue, because it's just all over the place. And as a result, can I say it? I don't know. I won't say it yet.
We'll hold off on it.
Yeah. But there's just a certain character that seems to get more of an emphasis in the middle part of the film, I felt.
Okay, I'm actually trying to think. I think I may know who you mean, but we'll clarify that later on.
Yeah, we'll clarify. Yeah.
Yeah. It did. Yeah, it just felt. It didn't feel. I think part of the issue is, as you're saying, they're trying to do a lot with the story, even though the story overall isn't really all that complex. But it feels more complex than it actually is, just by virtue of how they set up everything. And I think part of what makes it feel a little not quite as frictionless as the original movie is that in the first movie Jake acted as our gateway between the two worlds. We don't have that singular focus this time, because now you have the human world, you have the Na'vi world essentially, and you don't have that connective tissue between them, so it's not as organic feeling as before, where you were sharing a perspective of this one character going between the two. Now we're swapping back and forth without that connective tissue, and it definitely feels a little disruptive, I think, again compared to the first. But but you know, as you said, once you get past like the middle, the kind of messier middle portion, like it does build to like a pretty fantastic climax, like, you know, a really action-packed final hour that really does kind of all come together. It has a singular focus, like you never really feel like you're jumping around or anything. Like it feels very much focused on this just really fantastic conclusion, and I think it really does largely deliver in that sense. Even if I do think I don't know if I enjoyed it as much as Avatar 1's climax, just because it felt, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's hard to, I mean, I'd have to watch it again to fully understand why I feel certain ways about things, but I still feel like it was a really good final hour or so.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of cool moments. There's some stuff that you see on screen that you've probably never seen before.
Yeah.
And it just keeps building and building and building. It's pretty much it is the last hour. It's just straight action for the most part.
Yeah, it pretty much is like non-stop action. Like there's almost a movie's worth of action contained in this final hour. It's absurd, and they do some really cool things that I would have not anticipated. Like even seeing the build up to how it happens, I didn't know where it was going. I'm like, where are they going with this? I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm keen to see the last hour again specifically, because there's so much that goes by, and it happens so quickly that you're still trying to follow what's going on. It can be a bit disorienting because it's happening so rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on, and I want to stress too, like, despite me bumping up against some of the plot issues, like I had a ball the entire time. Like, as I mentioned, even though we are discussing the pacing issues, like the movie still pretty much flies by. Like I didn't find myself looking at my watch or anything, you know. Like I still wanted more of this world, because every like frame of this movie is just gorgeous. Like especially, of course, when it comes to the underwater portions, of which there are many and quite lengthy sequences. That's a huge reason why James Cameron wanted to make this movie and perfected like the underwater like motion capture he did. And you can see that, like, it doesn't feel fake. Like when it comes, you know, like if you watch some of the you know, Aquaman or even the Little Mermaid trailers that we've seen, like you can tell they didn't film it underwater. It looks fake. This looks legit. Like they did an amazing job conveying this underwater sensation, and it just looks beautiful. It just looks amazing.
Yeah. I mean, what do you use in terms of words in the dictionary to describe it? I mean, the closest I can think of is if you watch a documentary and you see underwater sequences. Just imagine that with alien creatures, and it's exactly like that, and it's so real, and particularly with the 3D.
Yeah,
the 3D really adds to it. Yeah,
it really does. Yeah, the 3D just really further enhances your immersion in this world. And again, it's something that James Cameron understands, which almost no other filmmaker has. Like whether they were just post-converting it or they didn't film it with 3D specifically in mind, James Cameron knows exactly how to use a 3D camera, and I love that about it. Like this is, again, one of the best experiences I've had in 3D, and it really just further puts you into this like exotic area.
Yeah. I did want to touch on the high frame rate, and I think you and I see eye to eye on this.
So
there are a couple of times where it's very jarring because it's basically transferring from 48 frames per second to 25 frames per second, and you can tell, particularly for anyone that's involved in gaming, you can just tell when there's changes in the frame rate. And I understand why, because I know in an interview he said that the reason why he chose 48 frames per second, particularly in underwater sequences, is because in 3D there's a bit of a blurring effect at 25. But there was a couple of scenes, no spoilers, but where it was quite jarring, and I think you felt the same, right?
100%. I was hoping James Cameron would be the one to nail how high frame rates work. Maybe it does for some people. I did not feel it here. I do want, let me specify. I think it's complicated because I think he used it consistently underwater. Like, I think whenever you're underwater, it's always 40 frames per second. I think that actually worked pretty well by and large, because like it helped make it feel smoother, like, you know, you would imagine underwater to be, and it made it feel like, you know, otherworldly in its own way. I like that. The problem though is almost everywhere else, because they will cut, like when you're above water, it's not it frequently switches from 48 frames, you know, high frame rate, to the lower frame rate of 24 or 25. And it's distracting. Like, at least it's distracting. At worst, it looks horrible. Because sometimes it cuts back and forth even during the same scene. You can tell it goes from super like fluidity to the more choppy 24, and I never felt that 24 looked choppy before, but when you cut back to it, it then does look choppy at times, and I didn't, I'm like, I never had an issue with 24 frames per second before. Now it looks sometimes, I don't want to say bad, it just felt distracting going back and forth, and because I say it doesn't look bad, because some of the 48 frames per second and some of the high frame rate sequences, they did look bad. They look like a cutscene from a video game. And I've seen that complaint in some reviews, and this helps justify why we're talking about this on a gaming channel, because it's like a video game. But yeah. It does look bad, and it's distracting when that happens. And I wish I think at the least, I wish they had just chosen one or the other, go all in on high frame rate or the standard frame rate. But myself, I don't think I can recommend the high frame rate version. Like, as much as the underwater may have been enhanced by it, it's not worth the trade-off of some sequences looking terrible with it.
Yeah. I'd be actually interested to see the 2D version without the high frame rate to see how it differs, because it's extremely noticeable.
Yeah.
Anyone who plays video games. I went and watched it with my brother, and I don't think he noticed though. So, if you know anything about frame rate and you're used to playing video games, which will probably be everyone watching this, right? So you'll definitely notice. You'll definitely notice for sure. Yeah.
The interesting thing is, I never like. I'm pretty. I'm pretty. Like, what's where I'm looking for. I tend to know, like you, I imagine, like, we're pretty in tune to frame rates and resolutions and all that. But I never noticed the strobing effect that they mentioned happens in 3D at 24 frames per second. It never bothered me. So they're trying to fix something that I don't know if it even bothered most people. And the trade-off isn't worth it, in my opinion, with it looking like a video game at points. Because the visuals are so good, the animation is so great, that it's actively being undermined by the high frame rate sequences that make it look fake, that make it look less real. Yeah,
totally. I mean, I didn't notice it as much in the water sequences, but anytime you're outside of the water, definitely. I think if he wanted to keep it, then he should have kept it strictly to the underwater sequences.
Right. I think I fully agree. I think there's moments where, like, the camera even pans underwater and it's like 24 frames above and it goes to 48 below. Like, that's so cool. Like, that is great. But the problem is, as you're saying, it's not all underwater, and they frequently cut from underwater to above water, and the above water sequences are the parts that when those are in high frame rate, just looks really out of place compared to the rest of the movie.
Yeah. And that's with any time there's a sudden change, either in frame rate or even the type of video lens that is used. Like, I think of The Hobbit, right? There's a Hobbit, I think it's The Hobbit, the second film, where you're watching it and then it changes to a GoPro, and it's like extremely noticeable.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of jarring effect where you're like, what the heck? So you'll definitely notice. Every gamer will definitely notice, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. So I am curious to see the lower frame rate version myself, and just see how much more I may prefer it, because I do think it definitely affected my enjoyment. Like, there were parts where I was just being annoyed by it, and I'm like, this is distracting from my immersion into this world, which is the opposite of what James Cameron was going for. So, in any case, without going into spoilers, I was curious about your thoughts about Jake Sully in particular, or the main characters, I should say, the characterization in general, because one of the complaints about the original Avatar was some of the characters are a little one-dimensional, a little flat. Jake Sully in particular got called out a lot. A lot of people didn't find him to be that compelling of an actor, perhaps, or at least his performance that compelling in the first one. I never really had an issue with it, but I do think that I actually really like Jake Sully in this one. I actually thought that he felt more mature. He felt like a father. It felt like he had matured in the years since, and I thought that came through in his performance, even though we don't see as much of him here because our viewpoints split so often now between all these different characters.
Yeah. I mean, I feel Jake Sully and Neytiri are not really the focus this time round.
Right.
But I do say Sam Worthington's performance is a lot better, I think, this time round than the first time. Yep. And I think he's got a lot more to work with in terms of the acting and the role he has to play. because he's a father figure in this, right? So
Right.
he's being the father figure to the kids. But yeah, I was quite surprised Neytiri didn't really get as much attention as I thought she would. But when she's on screen, she slays, man, in terms of the acting.
She kills it. Yeah. What's her name? Zoe Saldana, I believe.
Yeah, Zoe Saldana. Yep.
I mean, I think she's underrated for the first movie in particular. Like she does such an amazing performance in that I don't think gets enough credit, and she kills it just as much here. Like every scene she's in, she pretty much steals. And there's one moment in particular. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but there are moments I'm recalling right now. I'm like, damn, she did amazing. And yeah, she just like a next level performance that she's able to breathe such life into this, again, character that doesn't even exist, and it's truly fantastic.
Yeah, she's the MVP of the film, I think, in terms of acting.
Yeah, 100%, and it works so well. It goes hand in hand again with the visuals on display here. Like there are so many nuanced, like even facial details now that go again even beyond the first movie. And I'm thinking in particular with the new water tribe, whatever they're called, and its leaders too. Like there's subtle performances, like subtle glances or subtle facial ticks, and it delivers so much through it that that is even beyond what the first movie was capable of.
Yeah. Cliff Curtis, who plays the leader of I can't even remember the name of the tribe, but he does a very good job in his role. I felt Kate Winslet didn't really have as much of a role as I thought she would. She plays more of a supporting character. I'm trying to think of a scene where she really stands out, and I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, she was. I actually forgot it was even Kate Winslet until after the movie was finished. I'm like, oh right, she was in this movie, and it took me a second to remember who it was. Yeah, her presence was pretty minimized, I think. I mean, again, the movie really did focus on the children, it seemed, and that kind of came at the expense of everyone else, for better or worse. It is interesting. I don't know if it's a spoiler. I want to. I don't think it's a spoiler because it's not a specific plot point. I was surprised by just how much the movie mirrors the first one, in terms of like overall plot mechanics. If maybe actually this might be a good time to get into spoilers. What do you think?
Yeah, we should probably do it.
Okay.
It's too hard to talk about it without spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we can. All right, everyone, we're going to the spoiler section of the video. So if you don't want to be spoiled on this movie at all, tune out now. We're going to talk about everything. And that starts with the story. So I guess we'll talk about it in overall terms first. But the plot is almost identical, just with a new family angle layered on, where Jake Sully is essentially a fish out of water, so to speak, going to this new tribe, where at the end he's accepted by them once again with his eyes, even opening in the same way, and of course he has to save this, he has to largely save this tribe from being decimated by the humans invading this world.
Yeah, almost beat for beat in terms of even how it works with the intro and then the middle and then obviously the last hour being action oriented.
Right.
And even with Miles Quaritch, I think his name is.
Yeah, Quaritch, I think.
Yeah. Like his plot is fairly similar again.
Yeah. Can we talk about this for a second? This bringing him back is the biggest ass pull I've seen in a movie. Like I already knew who was going to be in the movie in some form. I didn't fully know how. And the way they explained this, which again, spoilers, we're spoiling everything, that they backed up his memories and then like reinserted them into an avatar's body in order to bring him back. I'm like, that is such an ass pull. Like it's technically not the same character because that one died. This is almost effectively a clone in an avatar's body. But it was hard for me to get over that, especially with, again, spoilers, at the end where they don't even kill him off again. He's still alive. It's like, how many times are we stuck with this guy as a villain? And I like him. I like the actor. I like the character. But I don't think I enjoyed him as much this time. Maybe it's because I didn't like him as much in the Avatar body. I liked him in his human form. Maybe it's because I thought, he should be dead and we shouldn't be seeing him anymore. I don't know. How did you feel about their explanation of how he ended up here and being back?
Oh, it was more just a rolling of the eyes sort of thing.
Right.
Because I didn't know how they were going to bring him back. I mean, I think he was just well received in the first one, so James Cameron's like, I got to find a way to bring him back. And so, I mean, it's even the same thing with Kitty, right? who's basically a reincarnation of Grace, I think, from the
Right,
first film.
correct.
Sigourney Weaver, yeah, same sort of thing. So they were just looking for excuses to bring the character back, and it was a bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it was executed. There could have been. I'd rather have just had new characters, but they do a great job in their roles.
I actually did really like Grace's or the daughter, whatever her name is, the Grace's
Kitty.
reincarnated form.
Kitty?
And what I didn't like, I alluded to it in a non-spoiler portion, but I didn't like just how they glossed over the entire thing in one line. Like they didn't know how she came to be or something, or like how she was born. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. Like, do you remember how the movie explained her existence?
No, there was one little section, but I can't remember.
Yeah,
there's a lot to digest
they just,
in the
shoehorned
film.
it between two other scenes. I'm like, I have no idea what just happened, and they don't really they don't really circle back to it until near the very end when we see her actually meet Grace, who I guess is her mom or something. Or I still don't fully understand it. I do like, side note, I do like how we actually kind of got to see inside of Awa this time. We actually got to see some scenes take place within this more spiritual world where where
isn't it this there's Awa, and then there's, what is it, the sea Awa, which is the
is it not the same Awa? Are they not the same?
I thought they were different Awas. Or maybe they are the same Awa.
They might be. I don't know. I
don't
assume
know.
they were just different ways of accessing the scene.
I thought every tribe had its own Awa.
Oh
maybe.
man, maybe.
I don't know. I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong here.
I could be. Yeah. I have to rewatch it to find out. So, yeah, maybe. In any case, I like that we were able to see like the visions that they could have, and how they were able to meet with characters who shouldn't be, who are dead. And that was particularly moving when Jake Sully, again, spoilers, gets to meet with his son again, in the afterlife, along with Neytiri. And that was a really moving scene. I thought that was a really powerful way of ending the film.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the sequences that I had a bit of a problem with, I think it went on too long, was, I don't even know the kid's name. He's the main kid who's
Spider.
pretty much got most of the storyline, but he
not
befriends that whale. What's his name? I forgot his name.
Oh god, I have no idea. One of Jake Sully's older too. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, good scene, but it kept coming back to it, and I understand. And the payoff is later, right, in the action sequence when it comes up onto the ship.
Right.
But I think that could have been shortened a little bit. I think it went on a bit too long.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think the movie could have, again, I didn't find the movie to feel too long, but there are definitely times that they could have tightened it up even more than they did. Like it could have been a tighter experience, and I think it may have benefited from that. Even if it still felt like a fairly brisk 3 hours, which is a funny thing to say.
Yeah. Even though it's 3 hours long, I feel it probably didn't need to be 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Like with in-game, it made sense. In my mind, it needed to be 3 hours. This is 3 hours, and it's great, but I don't think it needed to be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Those scenes could have been in the extended edition, because it didn't. James Cameron did an extended edition or a director's cut of the first Avatar, and I think that probably would have been better suited. But I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I think I basically agree. The middle segment definitely feels like the longest, and that's where it feels meandering. It's like I'm not quite sure what's happening right now, or like what the driving force of this narrative is. Like, obviously we know that Cordage or whatever the bad guy is out looking, for Jake Sully, but there's like a big gap of time where we don't see him at all, and that's where I think the plot starts to meander a bit, and again it kind of mirrors Avatar 1. Where it's more of an introduction to this new world, being the undersea, the water world essentially. But in the first one, you always have that impetus of the Na'vi are in trouble, the humans want their resources, and it's not until late in this movie when we find out what they're after this time, which is no longer unobtainium for some reason, but now they're hunting whales in order to harvest something from their brain. And again, this felt like it felt unnecessary. Like, I know a lot of people didn't like the term unobtainium, but now that it's out there, whatever, we should just stick with it. But now they're after a new resource, which is somehow even more precious than the other one because it.
Well, there's two, isn't there? There's two. So there was the brain element, and then
Right.
I think the general, who's the new top villain that
Right.
you don't even see that much.
No.
But she was saying that Earth is dying, and so they need to basically move everyone to Pandora.
Okay, I feel like this movie was a little bumpy. I didn't like that that how they handled that myself. I mean, so we knew from Avatar 1 Earth was in trouble, especially if you watch the extended cut where you can see that they had to wear like gas masks almost, I think, in the real world. Like it was it was in trouble. But I liked I don't know. I didn't like that they basically moved Earth's population to Pandora seemingly, and now because of that they no longer needed unobtainium. They had this new resource. And I don't know, it just felt messy. Like, I guess for me, I felt like a natural through line would have been, hey, Earth is pissed that we stopped their mining operation. Let's send more reinforcements. Let's reestablish, a base there and, make sure that this doesn't stop. And I don't know, it just felt, it just didn't feel smooth to me how they explained everything and then introduced this new substance just in order to drive home the point, hey, whaling's bad. We shouldn't whale. And it just felt lazy. And also, this is maybe a me issue. I get like squicked out by brain stuff, and there's like a lot of brain activity in this movie. You have like the torment scene of the spider where they're trying to like pull visions out of his brain. You have them whaling, pulling material out of whales' brains, and then there's also the fact that they had all of Cordich's memories backed up, from his brain. I'm like, man, what's the brain obsession in this movie?
Yeah, that's something that I never considered, but yeah, that's bang on. Yeah, there's a lot of an obsession with brains. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Not
what
sure
that's
why.
about. But how did you feel about the story overall? Like, I don't know. Is it just me? Am I alone in pumping on those issues, or?
I'm just kind of like, meh. I don't remember much of it. But then I didn't go with the expectation that the story was going to be so amazing, like one of the best stories ever. It's really by the numbers, by the books. It's just it's kind of there. I don't think that's the thing that grabs you, just like the first one. If you hated the first Avatar, I don't see you liking this one either. If you're really, really big on narrative and story, I think you'll just kind of be like, meh.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think what gets what is sometimes lost in the conversation surrounding Avatar is it isn't just about the story, it's about the experience. And that's something that, for whatever reason, some people forget about, when it comes to this visual medium, where in Avatar's case, it is about being transported to this other world. And James Cameron delivers a world that we've never seen before in a way that has never been presented before, and it's just visually amazing in that sense. Like, it does feel like you're being transported there, and I love that. So even though the story can be weak, that doesn't mean the film's worthless for it. I will say I was maybe a little disappointed just given the fact that Cameron had talked up the story a little bit more in advance of this movie. Like, it's deeper than the first movie. There's more going on here. It's more complicated. And it really isn't that much more complicated. And I think that it may not even work quite as well as the first one. So that's maybe where I have some issues with it, in that it's just not quite as clean as the first movie's maybe simpler story was. But again, it really is more about the experience as a whole. And I think by and large it works. Even if another issue I had is I didn't like the human characters in this movie at all. Like the whaler guys, I hated them. I hated all those guys. I know we're not supposed to like them. I hated them as characters. I hated that they were whaling, of course, but I also just hated how those characters acted.
What did you hate specifically about them?
Oh my god, you put me on the spot here. I don't know. There was nothing redeeming about it. Maybe just the way they talk, the way that we didn't have any real introduction to them until they were needed in the story. Like, I don't think we even knew these guys existed until the whales were introduced, right? Did we? I don't know. It just they just bugged me, the way they talked, the way they operated.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with them.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I didn't really have a problem with them. It was just interesting hearing an Australian accent midway through the movie.
Oh yeah,
that was,
it
was an Australian accent, and I was like, oh, okay. Spider was a bit of a weird one.
That's another character I feel like is a bit of an ass pull, where there was no indication this character existed before, yet he's somehow the son of the Colonel. When did he find time to make a baby?
Well, Colonels are busy. Maybe he did his thing.
Maybe.
One night of passion.
That's true. It doesn't take much time, I guess. That's true. Yeah. So what did you think of Spider?
I couldn't really work out, because he kept changing sides. I couldn't really work out what his motive was.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a strange character. Yeah. And I found a few of the bits when he's doing, when he's trying to do and be like a Na'vi, right? And he's going, I found it a bit cringe. Personally.
I 100% agree. So I think as a plot device, he feels a little weak. Like, he does kind of switch sides. It's seemingly, maybe, I don't know if it's inconsistent or not. I mean, I think it feels inconsistent. Like, we never get a good grasp on who he is, because he disappears for a large part of the film too. Like, once he gets kidnapped, we really don't see all that much of him for a good chunk of the film. And I never really have a great grasp on him. But then there's the fact that performance-wise, I think he might be the weakest in the movie. Like, especially in the end, like when we're in the climax of the film, like he was not selling like being in trouble or being afraid of his being concerned about his dad. Maybe I don't know what I was supposed to feel with him, and it just never sold me. He never sold me on the performance or the character.
I think what would have been cool would have been to explore the relationship between him and Neytiri, because Neytiri didn't trust him, right?
Right.
And there's one section where she was actually going to kill him, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end they're all happy family, even though she was just trying to kill him. Like,
this
10 minutes
raises another
before.
point that I had forgot about until now, was that yes, that's a great point with Neytiri, being not being a huge fan of him. But then there's the fact that once he was an adopted son of theirs, and once he's kidnapped, they're like okay with it. Like, they don't come up with a plan to get him back. Like, they literally just bail on the rest of the tribe, and forget about their adopted kid. And that was a little weird to me too.
Yeah. And I think the only one who really cared was Kitty. I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were the one that had the
And maybe that's why I
bond.
liked her. Like, she's the only character that cares about this other kid.
Yeah. And then he catches up with them at the end, and they're like, "Oh yeah, hey, good to see you.
Yeah.
You okay?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I don't even fully understand why Spider has to exist. I mean, I guess just to give the Colonel or the main villain a slightly deeper relationship to this world, so that he has some
more
conflict.
of a motivation, I guess.
Yeah, some motivation, even though he still feels fairly one note. Like, it's not until the end that we find out that he maybe sort of cares about this kid, because that's when he holds back on, that's when he trades, I think, Jake's kid for Spider, right?
Yeah.
Which, up to that point, we don't know if he would or not. And so maybe they're going to go in a more interesting direction in the future with this relationship. I imagine that they have to. That's probably why they set it up here. It just doesn't fully work in 3. Because, yeah, because by the end of, I guess what kind of, I have to think about this a little bit more. This may be an ill-formed opinion, but it feels like when we end at 2, we don't really have much of a better idea of where we're at than when we did going into 2. Like, things have largely returned to where they were. Like, the villain still exists. He still wants to get Jake Sully, I imagine. The only difference is, and Spider has returned to Jake's camp too, right? Like,
yeah,
everything. Like, they almost hit reset on everything.
Yeah, and I think Avatar 3 will, once we've seen it and we know what the story beats are, it'll probably be good to go and reflect on Avatar 2, because there's still so many unanswered questions.
Right.
And yeah, in terms of characters and their motivation and even the story. So yeah, there's still a lot more to explore, but James Cameron did shoot 2 and 3 together. Right. So this might be a type of Lord of the Rings situation where it's just kind of, you just have to wait until the next one to get the answers you want, maybe?
Yep, no, that's a great point. I mean, I think, 3 could definitely make 2 better in hindsight, perhaps. They're, it may lead to places that we just can't see right now. And I think even to, seeing 2 again, which I am tomorrow night, or, tonight, depending on when people are watching this, or yesterday, who knows when people watch this. That may, again, that may make some of my issues seem less important. Maybe it'll make them stand out more. It's hard to say, but I am looking forward to seeing it again, because for all my complaints, I still had like a wonderful time with this movie. It's a visual feast. I really liked most of the characters, and I think it may work a little bit better when I'm not actively being distracted by some of the elements that I assume would bother me less on repeat. Like, now that I know that, they have this ass pull of a villain coming back, like, it's not going to surprise me again,
Yeah, and I suppose it depends on the expectations you have when you're going into it, right? And James Cameron, he was saying, I'm going to do this, and the movie has this and that. It's great writing and better story and all this stuff. So it creates false expectations sometimes in your head.
Right.
One thing I want to point out is don't wait till the end, till there's no after credit scene. There were heaps of people just waiting in the theater. I already knew there wasn't one, but it was just funny. I'm like, oh yeah, I know these people are thinking it's a Marvel situation, but it's not.
Yeah, definitely not. So yeah, you have to sit through all 12 minutes of credits. There's nothing to see. The only thing there is to see is what you'll see at the very beginning, which is just some like wildlife scenes, which are kind of neat. But once those
Yeah, they're nice.
That's it. What do you think of Jake Sully's family? Because this was a pretty big change. You know, he has what, 4 kids, 5 if you count Spider. And there is again, spoilers. I hope you know this if you watch this far. One of them dies in this movie, and that was probably one of the most moving scenes during it. I think was especially again from Natiri. Like her performance is amazing there. Like she like you feel her pain and her anger and how that feeds into the most climactic part of the movie. And I think. During that scene in particular, I felt like I wish I had felt a little bit more from Jake. I think Jake didn't feel quite angry enough to me. Like, I don't know, he felt like he was able to refocus surprisingly quick.
Yeah, considering one of the other kids, he basically disobeys Jake constantly throughout the whole movie. He's constantly getting angry at him, and then his other kid dies, and the reaction is even less so than when his other kid's disobeying him. Yeah, he didn't really. I'd be angry. I'd be probably sad and angry. And yeah, I think Neytiri stole that scene completely.
Yeah, amazing performance from her. So how about the rest of the family though? How did you feel about the family dynamic in general?
It was cool in places. The problem is it's just very hard to balance that dynamic. I feel that Kitty and I just don't know the one that keeps disobeying Jake.
Yeah, I have no idea what the names are.
Yeah, I don't know what his name is, but he's the one he gets most of the screen time, right? Yeah, and the dynamic there. But then there's the real little one. She doesn't really get that much screen time.
No, she's there purely for comic relief. It seems like. She's a cute little presence, but she has no major impact on the story.
Yeah, just to have a cute thing there. Yeah, that's pretty much. And then the older one who dies, he had the dynamic between him and the other one was good, but as we've mentioned before, sometimes you can't tell them apart. They look exactly the same, and so sometimes it's like, which one is which? My brother who watched it, he thought that the other one died.
Oh, so yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, he got confused with which one died. So there's an indication there that some people weren't able to fully follow it, even less so than me.
I'm gonna be fully honest. There were parts where I even got some of the other characters confused. Like from a distance shots, like a lot of the Na'vi started looking similar to me.
Yeah, it's just all blue.
Yeah, all blue. And I didn't have that problem with the first movie, so I don't know what changed this time where I had that issue. Now maybe it's just because there were more characters this time.
Yeah.
Where I was having that issue a little bit more consistently. I wouldn't say it's a major complaint, just something I noticed. I'm like, I don't know who that is right now. Then the shot will clarify. I'm like, okay, there we go. But
yeah, and even the same with the newer tribe, right? It's just all light blue. Then you have blue and light blue, and then you still can't tell them apart.
Yeah. No, you're not. Although I will say, I mean, you're 100% right there. I did like the in terms of the new tribe's characters. I mean, I like most of them. I liked the chief, and I liked his wife, and I like their daughter too. Their sons were kind of crappy, but whatever. I mean, they were intentionally crappy, but
yeah. I thought they did a good job with them. Yeah. And once again, trying to balance out that many characters and the dynamic between different tribes. I mean, you see it in real life anyway, right? With different groups,
right,
trying to interact with each other that aren't aligned, particularly when someone's coming into a new family unit and disrupting the whole family unit. And typical teenagers, rebelling, not doing what they're told, getting into arguments and fights. I thought that stuff was handled quite well.
Is there anything else about the story that you felt good or bad about that we haven't addressed yet?
Not really. I mean, there was just not much of a payoff, I find. But then, as I said, Avatar 3 might be the one that does the payoff.
That actually is a really good point. It kind of gets back to where we're not really any farther in the story than we were at the beginning of the movie, because at the end of Avatar 1, like, it felt impactful. Like, they sent the humans back home, and yes, we knew they might return to the future, because they need more unobtainium. But you know, that at least was like a several-year victory. But here, though, like the only difference is they ruined a whaling ship, and that's basically it. Like the human civilization's still fine. They all still exist in their little city thing. So really, like, there wasn't much victory here. Like, the stakes were a lot lower, I think. It was more personal, I guess, maybe by design. But, you know, again, with Cordage still living, it doesn't feel like all that much has changed. And like, it does kind of undermine... Actually, yeah, you know what? This is actually bugging me more now that we talk about it. Yeah, like, nothing changes. Like, yeah, the villain's alive.
Still the same.
Like, the only people that died were the largely nameless people that didn't matter anyway, so...
Can I have to say, though, because James Cameron has a moment, because if you've watched Titanic, you know the bit where the guy falls down and he hits the...
Yes, everyone knows that. The propeller.
Yeah, yeah. Avatar: Way of Water has that one scene with the guy on the ship, and then the wire cuts him and his arm comes off, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, that was remarkable. I knew exactly what we were talking about the moment you started, and especially because like it feels gruesome even in this world, you know? It's like, damn, that guy got wrecked.
Yeah, and it comes so out of left field, right? Because you're definitely not expecting it. And I think you didn't like him, so you're probably happy with that.
Oh, I was happy about. I'm like, yeah, get wrecked. Yeah, get out of here. Good. But that scene was amazing. I at first I was a little hesitant about the fact that the whales could talk, but they won me over by the end. I'm like, okay, these whales are pretty great. They're pretty cool whales. So
yeah, totally. And they look so real, right?
They did. Again, the CG is bar none the best I've ever seen. And the only questionable part is the HFR, the high frame rate. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing it again without that, so I can better appreciate the visuals for what they are. Even though again, I thought they worked fine underwater. Like I thought, so the whales were pretty much unaffected by it. So
yeah, and even if you don't like the film, you have to realize that you're watching a very important moment in history. Like this will be utilized into gaming as well. I mean, I'd love to see this stuff in video games at some point. I think that's way off though, but.
Off? Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. Nice play on words. Yeah, but like, just watch it, and know that you're watching a very, very important moment, not just in film, but in visual effects and gaming. Like, it'll all intertwine.
Man, you're doing a much better job making this fit on the channel than I am. Yes, it's brilliant with it being gaming related. So yeah, no, you're totally right. Like, you know, every advancement will eventually filter down, and I'm sure it'll further push how games look in general. Like, I'm sure Ubisoft, the makers of the upcoming Avatar game, want to get it looking as close to the movie as possible. So yeah, however tech benefits everything else from this movie, I'm looking forward to seeing it. So
yeah, and Widow Effects. Is it Widow Effects or Widow Digital? Because it was sold to Unity, right? So a lot of that will be, it'll cross over. So yeah, you'll see some of the stuff starting to impact gaming. Probably not in the short term, but in the long term, definitely. This will be where gaming gets to. But yeah, so in the meantime, you'll have to watch Avatar: Way of Water to get that.
Exactly. Well, speaking of bringing it back to the movie itself, I want to kind of wrap it up. I know we spent some time like nitpicking the plot, some of the characters, but overall thoughts. How are you feeling now after we discussed it? And are you going to go see it again? Do you think?
I might go see it again. My wife hasn't seen it, and she wants to see it just because of the cultural impact and because everyone else will have seen it and she hasn't seen it. Yeah, so I will probably end up watching it again, but overall, I think it's good. I think the visual effects are the highlight of the film. They're the thing that stands out the most. But it's basically Avatar again on mega dose of visual effects steroids. That's probably how I'd put it. And I do look forward to seeing what happens with Avatar 3 as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, even if I might be a little disappointed by it on the whole, I still had a great time. It's still, James Cameron is just, like, a master of his craft, really. Like, when it comes to constructing, like, action sequences or presenting this majestic world, like, he's largely unmatched. And so even if the story and the characters may have let me down in some respects, like, it's still a visual feast. I still had a ton of fun. It's a roller coaster ride from the start to the end. And even with my my quibbles and issues with it, like I'm gonna be there day one for Avatar 3 as well. And it's possible that can even make Avatar 2 look better by comparison. We don't know for sure. I hope that they go somewhere new with these characters instead, and I hope it's not just a retread again of Avatar 1. But I am hopeful, and I'm excited for where Avatar goes in the future.
Yeah, and don't forget it's an original IP, right? It's not Marvel.
Yep.
So go support this stuff if you want to see new original stuff, because everything these days is all remakes or, just remixing another IP that's been around for decades. So it's cool to see this stuff be successful because it opens up doors for other filmmakers.
Yep, 100%. Well said. Well, speaking of being well said, you have a ton of awesome content on your channel featuring all kinds of people explaining things from their past. Can you tell us a little bit more about where people can find your content at if they don't already know?
Yeah, so it's Kiwi Talks with a Z. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff. Most of my stuff's on YouTube. You can watch a lot of my interviews. I'm mostly known for Metroid Prime and Retro Studio stuff because I think I've probably interviewed everyone that is possible to interview.
Seems that way.
Yeah. So if you're interested in any of that, definitely go check it out.
And you'll find a link to that in the description below. So thank you so much for joining me today, Reese, to discuss Avatar: The Way of Water, a first on this channel discussing a movie. That's how big of a James Cameron fan I had. I had to talk about this. I'm so glad we could get you on, a fellow James Cameron fan, to discuss this movie. And I'm excited to go see it again. So we'll see if my thoughts change at all on the second viewing. But
yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's a joy to talk about this stuff, especially someone else who loves James Cameron and Avatar. So
yep, glad to hear it. We've had a 13-year wait, so we've had a lot of pent-up energy to discuss this. Chat, let us know what you, or whoever's watching this right now, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Did you love it? Were you disappointed by it? Do you agree or disagree with our criticisms? And what did you think of the HFR if you saw it there? Let us know in the comments below. And also let us know if you ever want to see videos like this again, or is this one it? Because we may be back for Avatars 3, 4, 5, and maybe 6 and 7. James Cameron said there could be even more. So we'll see. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Check out Kiwi Talks. We'll catch you later. Bye.
See ya.